Good Tuesday morning. This again, that is Hosea, okay? But you see, now you see the pain of the prophet, the heart of the prophet, the pain of God, actually, you see, because of infidelity of the spouse. Okay, he says, they made kings in Israel, but not by my authority. They established princes, but without my approval. With their silver and gold, they made idols for themselves to their own destruction. See? Cast away your calf, O Samaria. My wrath is kindled against them. How long will they be unable? How long will they be unable to attain innocence in Israel? The work of an artist and no God at all, destined for the flames. Such is the calf of Samaria. Boy, what a testimony in life. You betray God, you betray Christ, you get what you pay for. And that's self-destruction. It's not condemning us. We condemn ourselves. Yeah. Boy, this is one of the most famous lines in the prophetic tradition, the Bible. When they sow the wind, they shall reap the whirlwind. Boy, is that true. Think of the 20th century. Think of the empty rhetoric and ideologies of the 20th century, and think of the whirlwind, the 20th century horror. What did that Pope call it? The 20th century is a century of horror. 80 million people were killed in the Second World War. 80 million. Because of these monsters who sowed the wind. Talk about sowing the wind. The rhetoric of Adolf Hitler. The whirlwind. With a catastrophic rape of Europe and the world. Think about it. You don't have to be a PhD in history to see the story. You sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. See? Yeah. That's the truth, too. If we worship the false gods, gods of power, especially that one, or wealth and power, that combination has always led to self-destruction. Yeah. Because they're false gods. They're condemned to their own temporality. Yeah. That's the truth. You see the monsters of history, at least European monstrosities, were former Christians. Almost universal. I don't know one that wasn't. Yeah. Hitler was a Catholic. So one time he actually served Mass, most likely as an altar boy. He came so close to Christ in the Eucharist. And then you look at him, that monster in 1945, what he had wreaked on Europe, his own country. The testimony of the whirlwind is the burning and crushing destruction of the city of Berlin. That is the truth. Look at his idea in 1939, 1940 of building Germania, that Berlin would be the model city of the world, okay? And see what it produced in 1945. The rubble of Europe, the rubble of Berlin, the Russians coming in one end, the Americans and Brits coming in the other. A destroyed people, a destroyed city. That's your whirlwind. That's your whirlwind. In a sense, the betrayal of the gospel, beginning in the 17th, 18th centuries by the European community through the Enlightenment, 17th century Enlightenment, the banishment of faith from the centrality of wisdom, where they bought science over faith, not taken away from science. I'm in the business of science, philosophical science. But when they made it an absolute, and they dismissed faith to mere sentiments of the heart, they invited the Holocaust, and literally and figuratively, because they worship false gods, the gods of power. Yet they gave rise to great constitutional governments, but even them, they failed. Remember, Germany was a democratic country. They elected Hitler. You got to think about that. Democracy left to itself is not a wisdom. In fact, it's the most dangerous, but the best form of government. Thank God for constitutional democracies. Thank God. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay? I so believe in it fiercely. And I defend it, the Constitution, see? But I also know it's the weakest, in a sense, the most capable of collapse. See? That's the truth. We are the longest, America's the longest standing of democracy, of a constitutional democracy, I believe in history. They don't last. They don't last because, okay, the whim of the stupid. Put it that way. It's so easy to manipulate the crowds, to chase the false gods. And what we end up doing is sowing the seed, placing the seed. What does it say? How does it say it? We sow the seed of we sow the wind. Excuse me. We sow the wind, hot air, false rhetoric, false ideologies. We give up the faith for the ideologies, and we sow the whirlwind. Adolf Hitler, a perfect example of that. So was Mussolini. Mussolini was a fat clown. He was a jerk. Okay? Not harmless. Ask any Ethiopian. Okay? Not harmless. And he actually modeled tyrannical dictatorships for Hitler. Hitler admired Mussolini. But then you have Stalin, who was a seminarian. You have to think of these monsters. I always think of that. If there is no hell, there is no justice. I mean that. Because they caused hell on this earth. They sowed the wind. And the world reaped the whirlwind. Yet the great story is the recovery of Europe and America, for that matter. Great human spirit. I think of Hosea calling us into the desert. Maybe the desert was the 20th century. He calls us into the desert to remind us, to call us back to fidelity. Or else we sow a wind that becomes a whirlwind. I mean that too. I'm not looking for a theocracy. I strongly believe in the great American experiment. Believe it powerfully. But I also know its limitation. See, at the very root of it is human dignity and a profound humanism that motivated our founding fathers back in the 18th century. I think it's extremely important that we retain the depth of our humanity, our humanism. And that flows out of Judeo-Christianity. The root of our humanism that undergirds our constitutionality is human dignity, okay? And that dignity is rooted in the Judeo-Christian vision of what it is to be human and what we are called to be. Think of Hosea. Hosea called into the desert to be the intimate companions of God, to bring life and justice and goodness to life. You abandon that primal luring, that primal relationship, you risk sowing the wind. The false ideologies, the false commitments, the monstrosity occurs. The disfigurement of Europe came from the abandonment of Christ as the primal root of the humanism that underlay the democratic governments and the evolving of governments, etc., in Europe. We gave up the lordship of Christ, the companion, for the monstrosity of power without Christ. Those men thought themselves as messianic figures. Hitler did, so did Stalin. These guys all did. They saw themselves as making the world, saving their people, etc., and they destroyed them. I didn't say that well. I believe in only one Christ. All I need is one Messiah. I don't need other messiahs. I don't believe in messiahs other than Christ. The false gods are the most dangerous because they are the wind that gives rise to the whirlwind. And history is a proof of that. I didn't make it up. Just read the 20th century. If that doesn't make you think, holy mackerels, I don't know what it takes. Anyway, that's just a thought today with good old Hosea. Be careful you don't sow the wind, because you will reap the whirlwind.